Hi, everybody. While we're welcoming others, I just want to invite you to put in the chat where you're from. And if you want to identify yourself on your little rectangle with the 3 dots, you can rename yourself, as some of us have, to indicate your role, whether you're a parent or somebody who's had a stroke or brain injury or some other roles. We get clinicians in here, providers in here. And in the chat, please just let us know where you're from. We're just waiting for a few more people to join.
Give me a minute.
Wow, we've got Wisconsin, we've got a few areas around Massachusetts, Montreal, UK. Wonderful. So I'm going to start by sharing some slides. And if other people join, I'll ask some of the other co-hosts to make sure to admit them. My name is Mara Yale, and I co-chair the Parent Advisory Council, which is the group that's putting on these workshops, pediatric stroke and brain injury education. And this one today that we're excited to bring you is a young adult panel. Ultimately, we're after improving the care and lives of children and young adults who've had a stroke or other brain injury early in life. And we are representing Mass General Hospital, Spalding Rehab Hospital, and the journey through the whole lifetime. The experience of a brain injury early in life really has effects or potential effects throughout one's life. And it's really critical to get the best understanding of what's happened with you and how to support development after such an injury. Just as a disclaimer, this information is educational. If you need medical assistance, please seek your nearest provider. And I just want to give a history about what we've been up to. So we started these educational events in 2019 with 2 in-person events at Mass General Hospital, where we were excited and used to coming together in person. Unfortunately, that has not been possible for quite a while. So we moved to an online virtual format in 2020, in the fall of 2020. And we have seasons that run with the academic year. So we ran 10 events last year that were virtual, and we're on track to run 9 virtual events this year. And then we're reconnecting outside on May 21st for those in the Boston area. And all of our events are now recorded and up on YouTube, as will be this one. So we invite you to check out our YouTube channel, and all of the events are really wonderful resources. May is Stroke Awareness Month and Pediatric Stroke Awareness Month. And our theme, particularly because of the pandemic, is to reconnect, to support others in reconnecting. And so we want to invite you, obviously you're here today for this panel, or watching it as a recording. We want to invite you in 9 days to this second event that's also virtual, where two therapists will talk about ways to take therapy sort of outside the clinical setting and make it playful so that you can integrate play at home and in your natural environments. And then this graphic is of our event that we're very excited to host at Spalding on May 21st. So all of the registration for these events is at this URL that I've posted here, and I'll put it in the chat for those who missed the slide. And I'm gonna stop sharing. I can't remember if I actually introduced myself. I am Mara Yale. I coordinate these events. I work with Patty Mussolino, who's a neurologist supporting these events, and Brian Wishart, who's a physiatrist, and many parents to bring these events to you. We are very honored and excited to have 4 young adults as our panelists today. And I'm going to hand it off to Nikita, who is the lead panelist, and he's somebody that I've had the honor to know for almost 4 years. So we're going to hear from each of the panelists a little bit about their story, and then they have questions that we've gathered from you and from each other that they'll be answering. And we invite you to also put questions in the chat, which we'll get to after their set of prepared questions. Enjoy the panel.
Yeah, thank you, Mara. Hello, everyone. My name is Nikita. Originally, I'm from Eastern Europe, but now I'm, reside in the Boston area. During childbirth, I have the brain injury that resulted in CP, and now, before my way to Texas for my PhD program, I decided to help in this educational event and facilitate or moderate or whatever term you prefer to help lead this panel and pass some messages for you and help you to understand the life of young adults with who experience some kind of big events in life. And now I want to offer to our panelists to introduce, to make a short introduction, short introduction they want to do, and say a few words about themselves and their stories. Chris, please.
Hi, I'm Chris. I'm from Central Mass. In 2018, very beginning of 2018, I suffered a left temporal brain hemorrhage. It was a long time ago. To be honest, I don't know all the details because every time I go in for an appointment, I'm sleep deprived. But when I tell people, I just kind of tell people I had a stroke. Today, I'm going off to sunny California to study film. I'm a senior right now. I'm going to college next year, and yeah, that's me.
Hi, I'm Hannah. I am 16 years old and I live in Seattle. And in utero, I had an ischemic stroke in my middle cerebral artery. And because of that, I have a hemiparesis, as well as some other minor issues. And I am currently a sophomore in high school.
Hi, I'm Olivia. I'm 22. I'm currently set to graduate from college in like 48 to 72 hours. So that's a pretty busy time for me. And I had a stroke either at birth or before birth, and it affects my left side.
And we can start with our questions, and I think we can combine some of the questions in a big topic like support, and I want to ask the panelists about their story behind the condition, behind the event. what kind of narrative you prefer speaking about the introductions? Does it make you vulnerable, uncomfortable, or you're kind of neutral about this? What kind of story do you prefer to say about yourself to strangers? How do you discuss the condition in the family circle? What kind of words about it do you prefer in general?
Well, I'd say when I meet a person, except for in this setting, usually I don't lead with, "Hey, I'm Chris. I had a stroke when I was 17." Or 13. Sorry, when I was 13. Usually, I kind of just when I meet a person, I wait like a little bit to tell them, because I want them to form their first impression of me based on who I am, rather than the kid who had a stroke, or the kid who had a lot of medical history in 2017. So it's not that it's something that I'm ashamed of. Like, I don't really care if people know. It's just something I don't want people to base who I am on. So yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Usually, I'm pretty open with people. Like, if they ask, if they say, "Oh, like, what's wrong with your hand?" or like, "Why do you have like a limp?" or whatever. And so I'm typically pretty open, but overall, I will wait until I know the person better before I tell them I have a stroke, because I don't want that to be their first, like, the first thing they know about me. And I want them to actually like get to know me before they know about my medical history.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with our two other panelists. And of course, I think Nikita will have his own story. But yeah, I think definitely letting that bond or that friendship get somewhere before you kind of disclose, because I feel like if you do disclose it, then what happens? There's always that question mark of, oh, are they just going to be like, bye, I'm going to, never see you again? Or are they going to actually appreciate where you're coming from? And so it's all complicated. So that's what I have to say.
Thank you. And speaking about my perspective is international. In the 90s, in Eastern Europe, my condition was like a big problem. Nobody knew what happened, or kind of what you can do or what you can't do with my condition. So my case was quite the opposite. Speaking about your reaction, Chris, I was forced to do something like this. Yes, my name is, and I have the condition, because I needed to explain for many people why I can't walk. So, or how they can help, or why they shouldn't to grab me like a log and carry on the shoulder. To explain the limits of help, or what kind of help do I need. And I want to add one more question to this topic. What was the most beneficial thing or helpful thing that your parent, caregiver, friend, or any support person told you at any point of your personal journey? And what may be well-intentioned, but wasn't so helpful, beneficial, or supportive to you?
Well, I think the main thing for me to get through like any of my stuff was just having people around me who kind of just let me move at my own pace, because I both didn't want to get like held back, and I wasn't able to like move necessarily at the same speed as other people, like right after I had my stroke. So having my best friend who kind of understood that things were going to be more difficult, but that I didn't want him to treat me differently. I had a lot of accommodations at the time, to like get from class to class and stuff. I had more time to just get from class to class, And the other thing that was in my accommodations that I didn't know about was that like I could have people carry my stuff. And one of my teachers goes to my best friend and he's like, and she's like, why don't you should be carrying his stuff. And he goes, he's gonna punch me if I try to carry his stuff. And like he's right. Because I didn't want to be treated like I was different. I wanted to just kind of stay kind of doing things as I was able to.
Yeah, so for me, since I had my stroke like in utero, I don't know like how people would have treated me differently if I hadn't had a stroke at some point in my life. But for me, even like some of the most supportive people in my life have even like questioned my abilities. And so I think that like for me, what I love when people is when they don't like automatically have low expectations for me, and they don't judge about what I can accomplish until they actually know who I am. And so I find it really helpful when people are just like, they don't say, oh, like you might need extra support or you might not be able to do this or that, but more of like I'm going to go with you like as or like I will help you as much as you need help, and like they don't just make assumptions.
For me, like growing up was fairly normal. I knew that there was something that, had happened, but it didn't really hit me. There was like an aha moment where it's like, oh yeah, this thing, it's forever. It's not just a temporary, issue. I don't want to say that it's an issue because it's not, it's just a temporary thing. But yeah, I think that really, nothing else really happened. So I think that if just, treating me as normal, and I think that was fine, because now I feel like that's how I treat everyone else, is I don't judge anybody else until they are feeling comfortable enough to open up to me. And then I will open up to them.
Thank you for that. And I will add one of the elements of international experiences. I said, in my country, it was a big thing to be disabled. And for this reason, even in my family circle, people told me different kind of things. And maybe I want to share one thing that was helpful and offensive at the same time. Because when my mother said to me to think that I destroyed her career and I'm a punishment from God, that my disease is punishment from God, I decided to be as good as possible, to be sure that people around me shouldn't worry about me. And that's why right now I traveled around the world, maybe more than any of my relatives in life. And I'm at the opening of my PhD program, because I don't want to be a failure or punishment from God. Maybe it was offensive, but it also was a booster for my life, to be maybe more motivated than I would be in the opposite way. So it's a little bit, in my case, it's tricky thing. And I want to continue the idea of support or good thing to say. What could you say for third grader, you from the past, maybe to support the child with the same condition? What could you say, to something good or some piece of wisdom? Good, bad, real. What else you can think of? please share some of the ideas.
Well, it's hard to say because I think every case is very different. But if I were to go back specifically to my younger self, would really just be like keep getting through it. I went through some pretty low moments for a little bit, and like it was hard to keep going. I did, and I'm glad that I did. I'm glad that I stayed going to school, stayed like on top of, or at least as much on top of my classes as I could. Because like now I'm in a place where before my stroke, before any of my diagnosis, I'm at a place where I saw myself being maybe not exactly the same, but I'm like proud of where I am. And even if I didn't have the stroke, I would still be proud of where I am. Yeah. So it really just to keep going, to get through it and keep working.
For me, I had been told many times, like even as a kid, that I couldn't do something, that I wouldn't be able to drive, that I wouldn't be able to get a job when I was older. And so kind of just to keep pushing through, keep working, knowing that you are not defined by your stroke, you're not defined by what happened to you, you're not defined by a medical diagnosis. I think that's just really important to remember, because for me at least, it consumed so much of my time and energy when because I was so worried about like being different, or people not liking me because of what happened to me. And so I think that that kind of just realizing that this is not the end of the world, like you can still accomplish just as much as you wanted in your life, if not more, and that it's not the worst thing in the world that happened to you, and that you're still alive, and that's all that matters.
Yeah, kind of pigging back off of what the first two panelists said. Yeah, just like don't give up, and like keep your sights set on your goals and dreams. And I think, it doesn't necessarily affect you in a big way. At least for me, I don't think about it all the time. It's not something that, occupies my every thought of the day. But, just keep going, keep pushing yourself. And, regardless of what anybody else says, just keep doing you and shine on.
I want to echo you in some way. For me, it will be a little bit different phrase. I thought about this at some point, that I need to be a best friend to myself. At some point in my life, I feel like fairly alone with my life, with my condition. At some point, I decided that as soon as nobody really around, I need to be the best friend to myself. And for me, it means also not to be, afraid or ashamed to ask for help, or to accommodate myself, or to be, assertive or demanding, because there is nobody around you to help you. You need to be the best friend to yourself. So for me, I want to pass this message to anybody with some similar challenges. Be the best friend to yourself. Don't allow anybody's opinion about you, or assumptions, or some offensive narrative to get under your skin, and just speaking about your reaction, push through it, because you're the best friend to yourself. And I want to continue with this idea of connection between past and future and past. And I want to ask you: is it easier to be comparing the conditions of your life with this event, with these challenges? Is it easier to be a child, maybe more accommodations or people around you, or an adult, and you found something easier as an adult when you're handling your life challenges?
Well, it's hard for me to really speak to being an adult because I've only been an adult for about 4 months or 5 months, or no, 4 months. And I've stayed in school for those 4 months, so I've had my accommodations basically since I was diagnosed. Yeah, well, just speaking to accommodations, I don't think I'd be able to be where I am right now if it weren't for accommodations. Especially in like my math classes, I just can't do math at the same speed as other people. Like I'm taking AP calculus, but if I didn't have the extra time on tests and stuff like that, I don't think I'd be able to do it. So I think that kind of answers the question, but I'll pass it on.
Yeah, so for me, I never had any accommodations. I was able to get everything in on time. I didn't need any extra time. And I'm very thankful for that. But I don't know, like there hasn't really been anything that's become easier over the years or that has taken less time. I pretty much like learned everything that I would need to learn like at the at the or average age. I learned how to tie my shoes when I was 6 and stuff like that. So like nothing for me has ever like changed in difficulty. I don't know if that answers the question. Hopefully it does.
Yeah, this is a tricky question. I I think there's a certain youth of the child that is really like the innocence of it, where it's just like, oh yeah, it's nothing. But then as an adult, you're able to advocate more for yourself and you're able to, explain it better. So I don't know. I would almost say 50-50, but yeah, in terms of accommodations, definitely like having accommodations while you're a child and kind of growing up and being a teen, preteen, and then getting into teen and young adult, that it definitely helps. But in terms of it being easier comparing adult versus, children, I can't compare it.
And speaking about from myself, I can kind of compare, and I can say that for me it's easier to be an adult for a similar reason that you mentioned about ability to advocate, to speak up. Recently, I got my loans for my PhD, and it was a big delay related to some bureaucracy and notarizing the forms for loan, and everything was resolved only after I via email yelled at the people and threatened them to to complain to the diversity office. And this capacity to not to just advocate, not to just explain, but to say that I know my rights and your style is discriminatory and I'm not going to tolerate this kind of thing. It's for me it's like a benefit of being adult, because I remember myself as a child, and everyone, doctors, parents, people around, knew better about my life, about my capacity, about my possible future, and
Hello.
and it never happened.
Hey.
So yes, it's better to be, for me, it's better to be an adult. And speaking about accommodation, as soon as this topic came up, I want to ask yourself, ask everybody here as a panelist, each of the panelists, about one thing. How often you were forced maybe to overrate your challenges in order to get accommodations, or it's not the case in your situation. There is no, like, I remember sometimes that I needed to demonstrate my fragility or my limits to get accommodations. Was it the case for you?
For me, it was not. So I think I forgot to mention something. So in 2017, on top of before my stroke, I was diagnosed with cancer, leukemia to be exact. Because of that, it was pretty easy to get accommodations because how's a school gonna deny a child with cancer accommodations? And then from then on, it stayed pretty easy to get accommodations because again, I had a stroke and it's easy to name that. So for me, it was pretty easy to get accommodations just because of the name of it was, a school isn't gonna necessarily just not give me accommodations because, like I said, it just because they have the name and everyone knows what those things are and they can easily say like, that can hinder your ability to do math and stuff like that. So it wasn't too difficult for me to get accommodations.
Yeah, so for me, I never really needed any accommodations in school, but I do know that there were some times where if I like wasn't able to do something in PE or I wasn't able to do something like at a summer camp, I would just tell the teacher, the counselor really quickly. I'd be like, oh, like I had a stroke. I have some weakness on my right side, so I don't think I'll be able to do this. And as soon as they heard that, they were like, yeah, that's completely fine. Go ahead, like do what you need to do. And so for me, even though I never have really had to deal with accommodations, if I have had to, then it's been pretty easy.
Yeah, I think to Nikita's point, like I've never had to exaggerate and been like, oh yeah, you said fragile. Like I've never used that language to get accommodations. And I almost feel like I have the opposite problem where I don't ask for help often. And that's just generally, that doesn't even have to relate to, my disability, but like, it just doesn't, I feel like I'm pretty like a self-sufficient person that I can go about my life and I don't really need anybody else's help. But yeah, in terms of accommodations, I could go so in depth. I don't know if there's another question about it, but yeah, I will save that for later.
Yeah, thank you. I want to add two things. It's literally about a particular experience of the country that you're located. Because I mean that in my country, in Eastern Europe and Belarus, it was a very limited list of accommodations, and it was a question for me: if I need accommodation, why I should go to the ordinary school and not, something specific like for people like you, as you know, as people sometimes told me. And in the US, I was kind of not forced, but at some point, I guess I needed to little bit overrate my condition to, for example, get Barrett transit during the interview to say that I can't use the public transportation and explain in a details that I'm weak at some point to verify my need. So it was strange how at first in my in Belarus I needed to show that I'm more capable at some point, and in the US I needed to show that I'm less capable than I'm really is. So it could be like conflicting and frustrating. Thank you for sharing that about that. I'm glad to hear that neither of you needed to do anything about this. And to continue this topic about accommodations, I want to ask a different question. Accommodations at some point, as soon as you will graduate from school, will shrink or go away at some point. Do you have some, particular fears or concerns, hesitations associated with your condition or health? Have you ever feared something, aging or anything else connected to your condition?
Yeah, I mean, I've thought about that a lot, where like especially with specific classes, specifically math and science, sometimes I've relied on those accommodations. Like today I took some AP exams, and I don't think I'd be able to have finished those without extended time on that. But to be honest, like thinking about where I'm gonna hopefully end up, like I'm gonna be an art student. I'm not worried about like having enough time to do that stuff. Where the only thing that I really need it for is math. So, and I'm hoping that I don't have to work with math too much later in life. So, yeah, I'm a little bit worried for college, but I'm gonna still have those accommodations. So yeah.
Yeah, I can't really answer this question that well just because I don't have I don't have any accommodations, but I do think that obviously I do have fears for the future, but I don't think that especially once I go off to college, I don't think my stroke will affect me that much in my educational life.
Yeah, I mean, I don't, as I mentioned, I'm 72 hours away from graduation, so I'm not using my accommodations right at this moment. But my kind of, I don't know, I wouldn't title it as a fear, but something that just I keep in the back of my mind is, oh, I'm growing up with, the effect of something that happened at birth. How is that going to affect me as I get older? And thinking about, growing up, it's like, oh, do you exercise more? Do you, does that mean once a day that you're getting out and you're walking for 30 minutes? Does that mean an hour every day? So all of these things that hopefully I will rein in the next couple of months, because I will have a lot of free time.
I can say for myself that I had particular fear, and now I'm living the situation that cured my fear. I was frightened to be a parent with the CP, and at some point I thought that without full physical functioning, I wouldn't be able to be a good father. But now I see that I can do more than I thought, and that my main asset is my brain and my ability to work and provide my family. So now I cured my biggest fear with the reality, and maybe the most enlightened thing of the last few years for me, that you can fear anything, but reality could be basically better than you thought. I'm healthier than I thought, I'm smarter than I thought, and now I'm better as a parent than I thought before. So it could be not worse, but better. Yeah, I'm glad to know that right now. And to say more about future and your hopes, I want to ask about the progress of inclusion. Maybe you're not using this particular word. What do you think about, what do you hope for in the future for other young adults? What the progress should be in the US or in the world? How society could accommodate not just us, but everyone else, with or without brain injury, but with other conditions, and I don't like this term, but disabilities. What do you think about like a higher standard of inclusion?
Sorry, give me a moment. And let me think about that. If someone else wants to answer, they can go and we can circle back to me.
I can go. I think that like society, just like in general, they're not very accepting of anyone who has even the slightest difference or any kind of like problem. I think they categorize people, and they categorize people as completely normal and then people with disabilities. And I also hate that term because it's such a broad term that it doesn't have that much meaning, because it can be absolutely anything. Disabilities can be anything. So I feel like society needs to, again, like kind of figure out who the person is before they judge, and that we need to raise awareness that like just because you have any sort of differences or accommodations or anything like that, it doesn't make you any less of a person, and that your opinion and your rights should be valued just as much.
Do you still need more time, Chris, or?
I think I can go.
Okay.
I think the main thing that I believe, so like I said, it was easy for me to get my accommodations because, you know, teachers could look at it and point at it and categorize it. But I know plenty of people, even people with like ADHD, who have struggled to get accommodations. And it's kind of insane to me how hard it is for some people to get accommodations. I've had a lot of people leave my school district because of it and go to a different school that would accommodate them. I think we shouldn't be trying to give, we should be trying to give more kids accommodations, because I mean, if you're gonna take a test, I don't understand why you need such strict like time limits. If you know it, you're gonna know it. Like, and if it takes you more time, I think like more people need to be accommodated for that. It's kind of frustrating because if I didn't have my accommodations, my teachers would kind of just think I'm stupid. Because like I said, I can't get through math on a normal. I can't get it done in the normal amount of time. But I can get it done, and I can get good grades, and I can take like almost all AP classes. I can do the work. It just takes me more time. And I think that's true of a lot of kids who aren't necessarily given that chance to, you know, have extra time. And it's frustrating. And it like I said, it leads to kids going to different school districts or maybe just giving up.
Yeah, I think in terms of what the world can do for inclusion is to do inclusion, include people, accept people. Something that like a specific issue that I struggle with or that I see the lack of is transportation, is that people just, you know, aren't, you know, accommodating for people with physical disabilities. I know that, and I know I shouldn't say like disabilities because that's, but like physical challenges, even if they don't, you know, like older individuals. And I'm not necessarily restricted physically, but it just helps. I think, you know, the world would be a better place if, you know, we over prepared for things and didn't under prepare for things and then reap the benefits or rather the consequences of them later.
And I want to add one thing about maybe in academic literature, it's called like, you know, colonial gays. I mean that for now, inclusion for many communities, it's like a favor to other people, you know, like me, like people with the health related challenges. It's a favor. It's like something specific. For example, my housing here in the Boston area, the cost is tripled because of disability access, because basically because of the elevator and some sidewalk. So I want to change the paradigm when inclusion is more about being not just people who accept others, but being non-violent. And it's not a favor, it's about being less violent. I mean structural violence also. Now for me it's about violence and non-violence, and not about serving to somebody or doing a favor to somebody. So I want to change the whole thing of thinking about this. I have health-related challenge or chronic condition, and I need some things to compensate it or resolve it. It's not a question of anybody's favor. It's about me, and world be non-violent to me. So I think that the most important thing from my side, that world should be non-violent to everybody, and inclusion is a part of this. Now I want to add some questions about from chat, some fresh questions. So first question, what is one thing your parents should have done better when you were kids, as related to your diagnosis? Maybe when you see events, at this point and you analyze the past, maybe something could be done better.
I can't necessarily speak to something that my parents could have necessarily done better, because for me, I never really had trouble asking for help. So for my parents, it was more, if I was asking for help, they knew that I needed that help. So I think the main thing that I'll say to any parents is, like, let your kid still be a kid. Like, they still want to be able to hang out with their friends and stuff like that, and be treated like a normal kid. But sometimes it's difficult to do that. So if, I don't know, it's hard for me to really say as someone who went through it, which is kind of weird, but yeah, I don't know if someone else wants to speak to it more.
Yeah, so for me, I know how anxious my mom was when I was a kid about how well I would do. Because she actually worked with patients who had strokes for years, because she was a speech therapist, she knew what could happen and what, like, as soon as I was diagnosed with a stroke, she was like, oh my gosh, will my daughter be able to walk? Will she be able to talk? And so she was always very, like, worried for me when I was a kid. And I just, like, want to tell parents, like, don't worry, your kid will be okay. They want to have a normal childhood. They don't want to be coddled. They will be able to accomplish just as much as they could if they didn't have a stroke. And, like, for me, like, especially, like, socially wise, like, I didn't really have an issue with that, and for the most part I wasn't, like, treated differently like, socially, once people found out that I had a stroke. And so if parents are also worried about that, they really don't need to be, because, like, yes, kids can be mean, but we get used to it if that is the case. So just to not worry is all I'm pretty much saying, and that don't treat your kids as the diagnosis. Treat them as a regular kid that just happened to have this happen to them.
Yeah, in terms of something that my parents should have done better, childhood was a long time ago for me. So that's looking back, there's really nothing that, or like one incident that I can say, oh yeah, this, you should have done this differently. I think they, treated me well. They treated the whole situation, and once again, shouldn't even call it the situation, like just treated this whole, treated the diagnosis with ease. And I think that really helped me, as I mentioned earlier.
And I want to add one thing. Maybe it's not the case for you, but for me, my condition made my parents really concentrated on me as a functional. So I told them a lot about one thing. I often heard the words, "Do you want to eat?" Are you well, instead of "Are you happy?" When my parents were so worried about me as being functional, not healthy, but even functional, to do something with the legs, hands, and everything else, that maybe I'm not often heard the words, "How you feeling today?" or "Are you happy to right now, today?" Maybe one thing that my parents could have done better is to ask me more about my emotions and less about therapies that I've done, or me as a person who just ate and I will in functional way. So yes, it's one thing that I maybe could have done better. And continuing with the idea of interactions, I want to add one more question from chat about very unfortunate thing about bullying or anything that maybe made you uncomfortable during the social interactions. Can you share some of these experiences?
I wouldn't say I ever got bullied. I definitely wouldn't say I ever got bullied. People knew me before, and if they were gonna bully me, they would have bullied me then. I didn't get bullied before. And then it would have been kind of messed up to start bullying me as I was bald and frail and all this stuff. So I wouldn't say I got bullied. The one thing that I did, I got annoyed by, was there were a lot of people who were kind of fake. Like I had friends who were only kind of around me because of like the stroke and the cancer stuff. And like it's easy to tell who those people were, because like I got over those things at the end of 8th grade and I went to high school, and the people who I'm still friends with were the people who I know were my real friends. And then there are people who I was friends with in 8th grade who disappeared. They weren't really friends. I mean, it's not really that big of a deal to me because like I said, I have my real friends, and I knew at the time who my real friends were. But I think that's important, just to know who those people are that you can kind of rely on to be there. Like friends, family, it's really important to have those people around you, because I don't think I'd be the same person today if I didn't have my parents be so supportive, and some of my friends who like visited me in the hospital and stuff like that. Like if I didn't have those people, I wouldn't be so motivated to keep going.
Yeah, so for me, my stroke isn't very noticeable. And so I never really dealt that much with bullying from people I didn't know, because they wouldn't know. Or if they asked, I would just give them the facts and they'd be like, okay, cool, moving on with their day. There were a few instances where people would block me or they would like unfriend me once they found out that I had a stroke. But I knew that they were toxic people. They were fake. Didn't they didn't deserve a place in my life if they were going to treat me like that, and if they were going to be that worried about something that happened to me before I was born. So for me, I never really dealt with bullying, and I have a great amount of friends now, and I don't struggle in like the social area at all. But like, yes, there have been times where I've been had like rude comments or like blocks or whatever made about me, but it's not that impactful to me.
Yeah, in terms of bullies, I can't, there have been bullies, but that was, as mentioned, I'm a senior in college, so that was more than 10, maybe 15 years ago. But in terms of like friendships, I think what was really impactful for me was that I moved around, not a lot, but in the key moments where you create those friendships where it's like, oh, just as, you're entering middle school, I moved during 6th grade. So it was like, oh, how do you readjust? And do you choose to find people? And then, so then that made it really difficult for me. But luckily college has been different. I don't have a boatload of friends, but I do have people that I can hang out with and that I think are, really cool people that I would want to hopefully, stick around and connect with outside of, after graduation.
Speaking about bullying, I want to continue my idea of being the best friend to yourself, because in my case, maybe I was the worst bully to myself. It was some comments, some ideas about me, some offensive narrative, but probably I was the worst bully to myself because I accepted that. I mean, I even accepted that as something that possible because of my condition. Of course, the thinking like that, it's normal, and only years of my professional way and personal development showed me that maybe I underestimated myself and was not so fair to myself. And it wasn't a problem of the bullies somewhere. It was a problem with me and my narrative, my own narrative about my condition. So let's continue and talk about fun. After this topic of something challenging, I want to talk about fun and about something that make you happy. What kind of activities do you like? What aspirations you have for the future? What you want to achieve? What kind of therapies you found fun or good for your time socializing, all the things? Can you share something like that?
Well, the only real thing that before my treatment and like my stroke and all that stuff and after my treatment, the only thing that really changed is before I used to play a lot more sports, and I kind of took 2 years off and I could never get back into it. And there are other complications. Since then, I haven't been able to get back into sports. And like I said, with my best friend now, he's my best friend then, we became friends a lot over soccer, but like in that time that I was like dealing with all this stuff, we started playing a lot of we kind of transitioned our friendship into doing stuff that we could both do. Kind of going a little bit back to that friendship thing, just having someone who like understands and like still wants to be around you, not just because like you're sick and not well, just having someone there who's willing to adapt with you and just go with the flow, because like I'd have days where we'd hang out and after like an hour I'd be exhausted. I just have to tell him to leave, and he understood that like it's not him, it's just a lot of things going on with me. Other than that, like with my own self, my goals for the future ultimately never really changed. I always wanted to work in film, and I wanted to open a production studio. And weirdly enough, not doing sports kind of opened the door for me to go work at a local access channel, which I still am doing now. I'm doing a lot of work today with video and stuff like that. I was able to build my portfolio and be able to submit that to the colleges, and I got into most of my colleges. And like I said, I'm really happy with where I am now, and I think even me 6 years ago would be pretty happy with where I am. With the exception of not playing sports anymore, but really at this point for me, that's not really important to me. Yeah.
So for me, next year, I'm going to be taking college classes while I'm in high school. So I'm going to be like taking all my classes at a local college. So that is always something I've wanted to like do for years, and I'm very glad that like I was able to accomplish that. And then after that, I hope to like go off to a 4-year college, and then hopefully get into the medical field, maybe go to med school. And so that's what I've dreamed of for years. That's what I've like wanted to do ever since I was a kid. And that never really changed. And as for my free time, I spend a lot of time like working out and hanging out with friends and kind of just doing like everyday teen things, and I love to travel too. So yeah, that's pretty much, I kind of forget what the question was, but that is what my dreams are.
For me, like this is gonna be so cheesy. This is what everybody says, but like I want to be happy. Like that in my life is just, I want to be at a point where I'm happy with myself. I'm happy with my career. I don't know if anybody read the little blurb about me, but I am getting a degree in communications. It's really media production. And I have no idea what I want to do. I have some things set up part-time after graduation, but I don't know if that's going to translate into anything with this particular person or if I have to find other jobs elsewhere. Something that continuously just is on my bucket list is to go to all 50 states. That would be really cool. And like my interests are cooking, soccer, like any sports. Like I like playing sports, watching sports. It's just really fun. I like watching TV and movies. I mean, who doesn't like sitting on the couch for a couple of hours and binging their favorite show? That's it.
Thank you. And I want to share some of my aspirations. I think in my case, everything is going on like good. I'm on the way to start there, like the Ph.D. program in my dream school. It's UT Austin. It's like top 4th in the world in communication, and I will study interpersonal communication. I'm really like I'm a nerd. I'm a nerd. It's natural. So, and one of the things that I also like, I'm a sneakerhead, and when I arrived to the US, I bought the most colorful orange pair of sneakers of Nike sneakers. So it's they are going to Texas with me, and I'm going to buy the most like outrageous cowboy hat that I can find at some point. So I'm happy in living my life in full, and I hope that it will be just better, even better than right now. So, and I want to add one of the questions that in the chat about different thing, about some low points in your life. Have you ever experienced the fear, for example, in a hospital? And what people, have you even been scared during the presence in hospital, for example? And what doctors, therapists, or anybody else could do to make the experience less scary, maybe funnier, you know?
I think my scariest moment was like the stroke and immediately after. I wasn't really conscious for a lot of it, and I ended up in the ICU, and I don't remember that week, or at least most of it. I've heard stories of that time that I was in the ICU. Some of it's kind of funny, like looking back on it now that I'm not like dead. It's kind of funny looking back on it for me and my parents, because like I was cussing out my nurses and they wanted to tie me down at one point, and then I started speaking Spanish. It was kind of, I kind of went crazy for a little bit. But for like, it was honestly more scary for the people around me than it was for me. Like one of my friends visited me in the hospital when I got out of the ICU, and we were kind of just playing video games, and I had a conversation with him like a month ago, and he was saying, yeah, you weren't you were speaking really slowly and you just weren't there. That's something that I didn't know this until he told me about about a month ago. But I just wasn't all there. And I think that was much more scary for my family than it was. I mean, hearing some of it was scary to me. Like apparently because of brain swelling, they wanted to drill a hole in my head, and hearing that kind of when I got out of the hospital was a little spooky. But yeah, there hasn't really been a moment where I was scared. It was more like the people around me, because the scariest moments for me, I wasn't really all there.
Yeah, I think because I've never really had to spend long periods of time in the hospital due to my stroke. I did have to have ankle surgery, but I only stayed over one night. And I did do PT for years, and I think that for PT, they treat you as a diagnosis, and they treat you as your medical disorder and not as the person that you are. And they will kind of just be like, do these exercises, like I'll see you later. That's what it kind of feels like. But I feel like PT, like I have had good experiences with PTs when they really like get to know you, and they treat you as like a human, and that they don't just look at you in the medical standpoint. But I also don't really think there was any like scary part for me in like a hospital setting. I never really had any health scares that I could remember, because I did have some when I was a baby, but that was for an unrelated reason.
Yeah, I can't remember any scary times either being in the hospital or doing therapy. I think where doctors and everybody else could improve on is just have fun with the patient and connect with them. They're not a diagnosis, they're a person. They're, they have families, they have mothers, they have, there's a whole kind of, it's just, there's more to them than just the time that you spend with them once a week, once a day even. So just appreciate them as a human and not as a singular diagnosis.
Yeah, I want to support you with in these aspirations. I remember my own experience, and it wasn't scary. It was cold and and boring, you know. It's not about being scared. So I want to add one example of great atmosphere. It's a XPD program. It's a gym in Spalding, Cambridge. I really like the atmosphere there during my rowing. It's a kind of little club of when I have a lot of fun. So for me, like the best thing that you can do if you need to spend some time in a facility is to make it like warmer, you know, because scary is a cold. It's about being less personal than you could be. And there I have some, you know, maybe in the most formal setting that I could imagine, I have a lot of good friends, you know, and this warmth of atmosphere is everything for me during the therapy.
I just have something I want to add. Because I did spend a prolonged period in the hospital for a time. The only thing that really made that like better was when I had people who I wanted to visit me. Like those moments where I like could have friends there. You know, we just sat around playing video games, which is what we would have done anyway, like even if they weren't there. Just having them there with me was like it was something that I look forward to in the day and make my day a lot better. Which I had a lot of kind of rough days where, you know, I was just sitting in the hospital room and be raining outside. For some reason, the weather really makes a difference too. But just being able to have people, if you can, and I know some people can't, especially right now, it's a lot more difficult. But yeah, friends makes things a lot easier.
I think we need to wrap up. I appreciate your answers, your work during this panel today. And I hope that I did my best. I hope I helped you to lead this thing, and I appreciate your honesty and bravery in answering a lot of questions today. Thank you.
And I wanted to thank you, all of you, the panelists, Nikita for moderating, and everybody in the call. I've been a little bit tearful throughout. I know some of you from teeny tiny, and some of you from the time that was the hardest. And I think, guys, you probably don't even realize the power and the maturity and an understanding of life and what is life about that you develop because of this event that some of us may not even get it through the entire lifespan. So thank you for sharing, for putting yourself out here and helping little kids. Most importantly, little parents. You said it very nicely. Parents are advocating and trying to get you to do something and enabling, and you want to be treated as a kid above all and be asked if you're happy. And I think that's probably one of the biggest messages to everybody in the call. Rest assured you're doing the right thing if your kids are having fun and they're happy. Is what most important the brain needs to develop to the fullest. With trauma, we don't go that far. So thank you. And just seeing Nikita, your daughter, going around in the background is also so beautiful, so miraculous in a way. And every single one of you guys in the call and the parents, what a miracle to be here, to have this opportunity and to try to make the world less violent, even to ourselves, to be less violent with ourselves, and how much better things will be. Thank you. And I can't avoid to say, I wish we could see each other on the in-person event to keep learning more about each of us. And I know some of you guys are not so local, so I understand if you cannot make it, but thank you for this event. I think it's going to be very, very, very important for a lot of the patients and the families and the parents and the providers. I think you guys also teach us a lot. Thank you, and we hope to see you on our Play to Thrive online by the therapists that we're going to have in a week, and then the event on the 21st in Spalding. Mara, anything else we are supposed to cover?
No, thanks so much to the panelists and to all who were in attendance. I'm going to close the meeting now. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.